You've got to pre-frame yourself mentally, right? In that gap to see, I'm going to get past this gap. I'm going to get to where I want to go, that next level, but I'm going to have to get through this part so I can eventually, I'm going to visualize and see the positive, the success, the happiness that's on the other side of it.
That's Mike Lindstrom. He's an author, keynote speaker, and communication expert who was trained early in life by Tony Robbins on psychology of influence. Under the Robbins organization, Mike worked as an executive coach for Fortune 500 companies across North America, becoming one of the youngest executive coaches in the Robbins Results Coaching Company. He's a straight-shooting, passionate leader who went out on his own after seeing the client base swell to more than 5,000 professionals. His impressive client base reads like a who's who in corporate America, with a list of corporate executives, professional athletes, celebrities, and even teenagers seeking that next level. Michael focuses on results and accountability. He appears on national and local media outlets like Fox News, CNN, Headline News to comment on topical issues.
You're listening to the Multifamily Leadership Podcast with Patrick Antrim, your source for success strategies for multifamily professionals, CEOs, executive leaders, and aspiring leaders that want to drive high-performance results for their property or portfolio.
This is Patrick Antrim, founder and CEO of Multifamily Leadership and producer of the Multifamily Leadership Summit, where we celebrate the best places to work multifamily. Welcome to the Multifamily Leadership Podcast, where I speak with executive leaders, authors, and business leaders on the topics that advance leadership in multifamily. It is our goal to give you insights into what top leaders are doing to drive financial results and great resident experiences for their portfolios. Now, if you want to get access to other resources such as videos, articles, show notes, other episodes of this podcast, and information on working with me or having me keynote your next event, you can visit multifamilyleadership.com. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/multifamily. You can also access the link in the show notes at multifamilyleadership.com. All right, so we're joined here in studio with Mike Lindstrom. Mike came out and had the opportunity to spend some time, and as we discuss on the golf course recently about how to create great workplaces, happiness came up. So we thought, well, let's create a show on how to be happy at work.
That's a good place to start, right? That's everyone's job, right? You should go in there, want to be happy. You're going to spend 50 hours a week doing it. You should be happy.
Yeah, I know. I went to some research on this, and my understanding is this goes to data, national data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and people spend on average working in sort of related activities. If you're out doing networking and stuff, you're about 8.8 hours, 9 hours a day.
It seems low.
At work. Yeah, for you, right?
Well, no, I mean, you think about it with a smartphone nowadays and people's access remotely. You may be in the office for 8 hours a day, but you're still working at night a lot of times. With clients I work with, even sales, financial planners, real estate. I mean, real estate agents, commercial or residential, you're working 24/7, even though you're not in an office. So that number does seem low to me, but nonetheless, hopefully what you're doing, what you call your job or career, is something that you're passionate and you're happy about. That's something that most people don't have. In fact, I'll throw a study in at you. CNN did a survey poll a couple of years ago, and they had 300,000 respondents to it. It wasn't scientific per se, but they were just throwing it out there, and they asked, if you had the opportunity to leave your current job and do something completely different, would you? Yes or no? And then 78% of people, almost 80%, said they would leave their current situation to go do something different. So I thought that was pretty astonishing that, 2 out of 10 people would stay put with what they're currently doing. That means there's a lot of people out there that are probably not super happy doing what they're currently doing. Right.
Now, you're on TV a lot talking about relationship, communication stuff. Mm-hmm. And so what do you think that is? Is it just people aren't communicating well at work, or they're just not making the right choice?
I think it kind of goes back to the old 80-20 rule. You look at any sales team or any performers out there, it's usually that top 20% of people that are outperforming everybody else. But that's also a mindset. It's not just a sales number or a revenue number that 20% are doing 80% of the work. Or even if you look at our country, look at the wealth of our country, the top percentage of income earners largely cover the whole, the rest of that number because they're high performers. So you think about mindset in the same way. That 2% of people or 20% or less of people think that way. They think about, well, what am I passionate about? What's my purpose? Am I really loving what I do? Am I willing to take chances? Am I willing to invest in myself? We're 80%. They're not willing to do it. They're going to stay comfortable where they are, and they're going to have a JOB. And I always joke with my audiences, JOB is just over broke. You just have a job. You get a paycheck every 2 weeks. You got your benefits. You got a roof over your head, and you have a company logo that you can throw that shirt on every couple of days a week and call yourself part of a culture. And to me, that's our country. Most people are right down the middle. I always use the 0 to 10 scale. 10 is very passionate, pleasurable, right? Level 10 experiences, I call it. 0 is depressed, pain, scarcity. And then you have level 5, which is comfort. And most people in our society are level 5 people. They're comfortable right where they are.
Yeah. It's interesting because we lock into these set jobs because of security, or we want, to be able to have certainty over, how we finance the things we want to do in life. And a lot of times in today's world, it's easier to, with the tools that we have available, to still have that job. If you're running an apartment building or you're running an automotive dealership, whatever you're running, still have that job, be part of something bigger than you, a team, a corporation, maybe they're doing some great things with that organization. But also with the rest of the day, the leisure time left over, do some interesting things. If it be write a book or do some other things. Do you think having something else other than that job helps people become happy? If it's they're learning guitar, they're learning something new, because people are bringing these personalities and these sometimes pains to work, and it's impacting productivity and the bottom line. But what do you think? Do you think that helps people when they do things beyond that job?
I do. I encourage it a lot because especially if you have the ability to do it. I mean, anybody who has hours outside of the 40 or 50 hours, which we all do, it's just how you manage it, has the opportunity to do it. Now, when it comes to the resources and maybe the financial means to go do certain things, maybe that's a little bit more limiting. For example, I have a client of mine. He's an insurance sales guy. He works 65 hours a week average. And he's been doing it for 15 plus years. He's got it figured out. He makes good money, but he's not passionate about it. It's a job. And he wants to he wanted to do something outside of it. So he likes real estate. So he went and started looking at buildings, and now he's quit his job, his traditional job, and he's full-blown involved with real estate investing. So I think for the average person, maybe you don't have the resources to go buy a building or go buy a bunch of homes. There's other means. For example, I have a really good friend of mine from our school. It's one of the fellow parents. She has a traditional job, 40, 50 hours a week, but her passion is yoga and her fitness. So she decided to go to the local, whatever yoga studios she goes to in Phoenix, and approach the ownership and said, look, I really want to do this. She's now about to supplant her former income because she becomes such a popular teacher with the students. And now she's facing the decision this year. Do I continue with my job, or do I take a little bit of a leap of faith? Maybe I take a little bit of a pay cut for a little while, but I really follow what I love to do. It keeps me healthy. It keeps me on point. I'm helping people. So she's faced with a tough decision, but she had the courage, like those 20% I talk about, those top performers, so that mindset. She had the mindset to go, hey, let's go explore that passion rather than just sitting around thinking about what she could do. She went and took action upon it. So people need that.
Yeah. So is it something that's like chasing that feather? Is it even something you can attain? I mean, I get that people can do other things like you just described. How about, winning where they are? I mean, is there anything out there that says, like, you don't have the choice, you haven't figured out yoga's my thing or whatever, and you're sort of stuck in this job? How do you turn that to a more enjoyable experience? I mean, is it what you focus on or who you're around?
Yeah, I think the easiest way to identify that thing outside of work that can make you happy is you ask a simple question. And one thing that I learned a long time ago from my mentors is quality of your life is directly tied to the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So if you ask yourself good questions like, what am I excited about? What do I love to do? What brings me happiness? What brings me passion? When am I most happy? When do I smile the most? I know for me, I was asked that question last week at an event, and I thought about it, and then the answer is when I'm with my kids. When I'm with my kids, I smile the most. It's point blank. So doesn't mean I'm not passionate about coaching and speaking, but if I'm honest with myself, the gratitude that I get from being around my children. So if that's true, if for somebody about something, why not go explore that? Maybe it is doing yoga. Maybe it is writing a book. Maybe it is contributing to a nonprofit. I'm involved with so many nonprofits here in Arizona the last couple of years. And going to these galas and golf events like you and I had a chance to do this past week, people are giving back, and it's a different energy that you see on people's faces. I mean, you think of all the people that we were hanging out with that day. Everyone was having fun.
Well, we talked about when we were golfing. That we didn't worry about anything.
Nope.
We were just present.
Yeah, we were just having fun. We were clear our heads of work and time schedules and a watch. Smartphones. Right. I think I only checked my cell phone in the golf cart maybe 2 or 3 times just to see if the kids were okay.
Right.
But that's the kind of thing that one has to find. But you have to go back to what I said. What's the thing that gives you the most gratitude? What makes you happy? And I think a lot of times people, unfortunately, are not willing to ask that question. Or if they do ask the question, they don't answer the question. They kind of fill it with a bunch of thoughts. Well, I kind of like to do this and I kind of like to do that. That's not what I asked. I asked, what do you love to do? What makes you happy? What makes you smile? And if you wrote, you and I are a fan of journals, force somebody to write maybe a full page, just bullet points. You don't have to write a paragraphical page. Just write, there's 26 to 28 lines on a journal page. 20 bullet points of things that you do in your life or you have done that made you happy. Scuba diving, traveling, writing, hanging around certain people. There's probably people in your and my life that we don't hang around enough. We are with each other sometimes. We don't see each other enough. But when you and I get together like we did when we golfed or we're hanging out today, we're peaceful, we're at rest in our mind, and we're enjoying each other. And that's another thing is the people that you can choose to hang around. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you believe in the full... we're humans and we have a range of emotions that happen. I mean, in order to really be happy, you also have to experience the other side of it, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, is it that variance of range that allows us to feel like we're doing something unique, or is it how do we, get through struggles and that kind of stuff?
Well, this is a good opportunity for me to bring up the happy study that you and I've talked about. This study was done a few years ago. There's a movie on it. You can pull it up on Netflix called The Happy Movie. And these doctors went around the world and studied cultures. So United States, Japan, Europe, all these countries, and found out through this test that they administered how there are varying levels of happiness. And what they deduced is that 50%, that's 50, of levels of happiness, your ability to be happy, is genetic. 40% is your conscious choice, or what you choose to do. It's kind of your outlook on life, 40%. 10% is what you call your general life circumstance. Could be your environment, it could be your culture, it could be the weather. Just think about the environment. That's the way I think of it.
Sure.
Well, in that 40% that you choose every day, just like you choose a job, you choose your you choose your friends, you choose what your activities are, what you look at, and what you take in the mind. They said that there's what's called a genetic set point. So if you did 10 as a really happy person, a 0 is like a depressed person, most people are in the middle.
Right.
But you may have peaks, but you're going to come back to your genetic set point. You may have valleys, to your point.
Like a thermostat or something.
Yeah, you may have a loss, or you lose a deal, or you lose somebody in your family, you have a tragic event. People who have higher genetic set points, let's say if you're a level 7 out of 10, you may have a level 2 experience, like an argument or loss of a deal. But that person's ability to get back up pretty quick to a level 7 is higher probability, right?
Sure.
They have ability to do it much quicker. So I always joke with people, if you have a low genetic set point, hey, that's 50%. Your parents gifted it to you at a 2 or a 5 or a 10. It's what it is. But the other 50% you can influence. And that's what we're talking about here today, right? What are we consciously choosing to do to go seek out happiness in our lives, whether it be golf or read books or be with your children. But I think a lot of times you have those level 2, level 1 experiences that puts it in perspective. But still, that genetic set point is going to really determine a lot of your ability to be happy.
Right. And, we carry that through our work. So, I mean, if we show up every day in that approach, I mean, the people that we're influencing, I don't remember who said it. What's coming to you is coming from you. Mm-hmm. And it's always been interesting to me because, even having that, I don't know if that set point or that mental choice is an attitude or whatever, but you have this sort of attraction. Like if I'm around happy people are going to start, contributing more interesting, more happy, more positive, I should say, not happy, more positive messages. If I'm in a group that is around complaining, what happens? Do we get more complaining? I mean, is it just, I mean, obviously we know that stuff is contagious, misery loves company, all that stuff, but how do we get away from it when we don't have a choice? Is there a way is it a mental block? I mean, maybe you have customers that come in and complain all the time, or you're just in an industry, a legal industry that's dealing with problems, or a police officer. Yeah. How do you move through those things when you don't have that influence of that environment? Do you have to really ramp up that 40% choice? Yeah,
I think, there is always a choice, right? I mean, that's what we always talk about, taking personal responsibilities for decisions. But when you have a given career, I'll give you a good example of my wife. My wife went to law school. That's where her and I met. She became a licensed attorney, prosecutor, went into the big firm life, et cetera. 12 years in, or if not sooner, she realized, God, Lee, it's such a litigious, mean, ill-spirited, everybody's at each other. Somebody's got to be right. Somebody's got to be wrong, right? There's the
wins, losses.
That's right. There's a winner and a loser. You're talking about people's lives. Right. So she made a choice this past year to become a mediator. So what did she do? She asked good questions of herself. What else could I do that's in my profession? So she went and found people in the industry that were the best of the best, which we call modeling, right? Go to the best people and ask them the questions. The great leaders will often give, because they understand what you give away, it comes back to you. Sure. So she was fortunate enough to have a couple people take her under her wing, and now she's full-blown mediating. And guess what? She's not dealing with plaintiff and defendant, wins and losses, insurance claims, and people arguing in a courtroom. She's now got a happy life. You can see her happy level, I've noticed in the last year, has dramatically shifted upward. And I noticed that her energy around the kids, the energy that we have in our marriage, how she is being with her friends, she's just a different energy. But it goes back to, no matter what position that you're currently in, you've got to break that box open and say, what else is possible? Even if you're like in sales, for example, or you're multifamily is a good example. It's that building, it's that culture, it's those tenants, it's that work team. That's your work environment. Okay, that's what you chose. So if you're not happy within it, then you have to get creative within it and say, well, what can I do to influence it? Maybe it's change the culture. Maybe it's bringing a different energy to the table yourself, because you're right. If you're not happy, you're probably bringing that into the workplace, and it's affecting other people around you. So making that choice that I'm going to show up completely different in my job, and make that a commitment, you start to energize people just by that personal choice.
Sure. What is this work-life balance thing? Is it exist anymore? Or is it just life? I mean, what do you think?
Oh, it's funny. We did an interview with Gary Tucker, who used to run Motorola. He's now well retired, and that question was posed to him on a panel. And there's young professionals, and him and the other gentleman who used to run PetSmart, former CEO, they both kind of chuckled and laughed at the question, and they said, "Oh, there's no such thing as work-life balance." You're talking to
just life.
You're talking about two CEOs of two huge companies. You're never off. I mean, you got a phone in your pocket. You're dealing with an issue 24/7. So they joked about it, but they did go on to say that they made choices in their CEO careers to have downtime. I can't remember whose schedule was whose, but one of them, they take off certain days of the week, just mandatory, like Friday afternoon from noon to 6, don't communicate, no emails, no nothing. Another gentleman was the summer. They leave to go to San Diego. So they're from Phoenix. They know that the heat out here can get a little warm. So he still works a little bit remote, but he noticed in himself that his level of happiness was much different when he was on the beach with his kids during the years of him being a CEO. So that, again, conscious choice. He chose the job of CEO, but yet he still found ways within that title, within that company, to find outlets to create that more of that life balance. So,
yeah, and being active, doing something with your family, you step up, you're involved. I mean, they bring out new leadership skills when I'm with my family. And when we have idle minds, what do you think that plays a role? I mean, does it allow doubt and fear and insecurity set in and contribute to happiness, or are we just not busy enough?
I don't think idle minds, I mean, gosh, isn't that an aspiration?
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't know. I mean, I'm best when I'm active.
Yeah.
And so if I'm not doing something or contribute, like, for example, what do they say when motivation, you don't motivate, but when you get started, the motivation shows up. Mm-hmm. So that's the activity part. Like even if it's cleaning, I may not enjoy cleaning, but when I'm cleaning, my brain's hitting and firing, and then I'm now more open, and I might even get some inspiration. But if I'm just not the type that would go and sit on a beach for 2 weeks and take a vacation and decompress. I mean, a lot of people recharge different ways. If I go to New York City, that's relaxing.
Yeah.
Believe it or not.
Yeah, most people that's not.
It's not. Exactly. It can be stressful.
Right.
So maybe it's the way that my brain works and the ideas that come in, but idle minds. And I know raising kids. Mm-hmm. I mean, we've got Father's Day coming up.
Yep.
How impactful that's been, being a father for you. But when children are, let's just using an example, after school, nothing going on, no activities, and they're just, bored, idle mind.
Yeah.
Does that matter, I think, in the workplace or even at home? I
do think it depends on the individual. I'm like you. I like to do and be involved and engaged with activity to keep my mind, like whether it's being on a golf course, being in a social environment. I enjoy that. For my wife does not. That's stressful to her to be around a bunch of people. She would rather be upstairs in the bedroom reading a book, and that's how she creates that piece for herself. So I think it depends on the individual, but you have to be honest with it. I think some people try to be somebody they're not. They try to go, I tried for a long time in my late 20s, I was doing it, but real hardcore meditational type stuff. And I found I just wasn't very good.
Forcing it?
Yeah, I was forced. I mean, I definitely got
to a supposed to work.
Yeah, I got to a place where I found quiet a little bit. But then I started realizing this is just not me. I mean, my meditation now is working out for an hour, going on a run or something, going into the steam room at my club and laying there for 15 minutes and just talking to myself positively. I can do that. 15 minutes in a steam room, you're cleansing yourself, you're quiet, you're closing your eyes, you're in a relaxed position. That's my daily meditation. So sitting on my knees in a hardwood floor, trying to get in that Zen spot was really challenging for me. Right. So I just said,
and painful.
be honest with it. That didn't work for me. And I know by definition that's a limiting belief, but I'm okay with that. That's not me. Right. I'd rather be in that steam room and be talking to myself in a positive way. So I think you have to think about yourself. Maybe you're not the kind of person to go chill out on a beach for a couple of weeks, but maybe engaging in some type of activity where you're involved with a group of people. I mean, that's why I see this a lot with groups where you have common interests, right? Hiking clubs, you're involved with a group of people, so you're getting the social aspect. And let's face it, as adults, as human beings, we like the connection. It's one of the human needs is love and connection. Right. So being connected to other human beings and doing something that keeps your mind occupied, like hiking, fishing, doing something, that's keeping your body and your mind active is great. But I think for the individual, you have to be honest with what are those activities that have been historically put you in that good, positive place. Right.
And so, all right, now let me shift a little bit or change lanes here. And in terms of placing value in happiness, for example, let's say somebody's an executive at a company or junior executive, and they place a lot of value or happiness they're sacrificing some things at home. Maybe they're on a career path and they're on the fast track, and they're I don't want to call it where they're neglecting at this point, but they're definitely committed. They're putting in the hours. They're checking their email. They're investing, watching videos, and learning to be better professionally. At some point, if that environment changes, termination, job consolidation, acquisition, disposition, however, pulling out of that, how does somebody recover when they put so much value in something when they're out of balance and other things? So they've just lost, everything that they've put their work into. Does that create like a deeper dive fall when they don't make, when they lose that connection?
Yeah, I don't remember where I read this, but they were talking about life events that were dramatic events. Things, for example, like losing somebody, so grief, divorce is a loss, and then they talk about a loss of a job and not just solely being terminated, but it could be an acquisition.
Well, not only the part of that job is social, they have friends there, right. They identity maybe. That's
it. It's the identity part, and your identity does shift. Obviously, going through a divorce or going through grief. But when it comes to your career, if you think about it, there's 6 human needs, and we could do a whole separate podcast on 6 human needs. But one of the few that I can mention here is significance. People get significance from their job. They get love and connection to other people from their job. And most people feel like they get growth from their job. If they're not growing in your job, why are you at that job? It's like a title. You want to get to the next position, right, or you want that bigger client. So you think about significance, love, and connection, and you have growth. And one of the other ones is contribution, contributing to your team. But let's take 3 of those. If you take your current position and it gets pulled out from underneath you some way, shape, or form, basically half of the human needs, if not majority of the human needs, are now gone. So that human being has to go find what's called a vehicle to supplant that. So the vehicle has been the job, but that vehicle is not there anymore.
Yeah.
This is what you see in life, by the way. Like when you have a partnership, let's say a partnership has to dissolve.
Sports franchises experiences when they retire players all the time.
Absolutely. I'm good friends with a lot of Major League sports players, and you see they're at the height of their game, and they're getting all their human needs are getting significance, right? The money, the connection to people, and a month later, they're just some guy walking down the street. No one wants their autograph. They're not recognized because they're not wearing the jersey or the hat or the helmet or whatever. That's why the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NBA, these leagues have come together to create programs for athletes post career, because they now recognize, holy crap, this is like a real thing. People get depressed, and you hear about these things like what happened with Junior Seau in San Diego. I mean, guy was the most amazing guy. He was a friend back when I lived there, and you would never think. I mean, the guy owned a restaurant. He had a beautiful family.
Right.
He was the man in San Diego, and what happened? He's no longer the San Diego Charger. He's no longer that Hall of Famer, even though that's next to his name. He was not getting his needs met. So what happened? Started getting depressed, right? And then it was a downhill struggle. I mean, that's the challenge that you and I want to challenge anybody out there. Is you see anybody in your life, in your job, starting to see that path happen. It's a real path. And I will say this: when I left the Tony Robbins organization back in 1999. We were big believers that you have a choice every day. Depression is only a thing for certain people. That
right.
So much awareness has happened since 1999, and my wife and I had a nice conversation about this past year, because I've been through times in my life the past couple of years where I felt off for whatever reason. I was looking at the landscape of life, and I realized, you know what, I may not be labeled as quote unquote clinically depressed, but I'm depressing with an ing. I'm this emotion, these actions, these behaviors that I'm exhibiting. If you pull up the definition,
right,
lack of sleep, stress, high blood pressure, I mean, check.
Right.
I had to be real with that, So I think a lot of times, but people, when you're even a great athlete, you're people in our world of motivation and happiness, and that's a bunch of crap. You can control your mindset and positive attitude. Let me tell you, I'm 44. I got 2 kids, and I've been married 11 years. That's my life landscape, and life's changed. So I've had to adapt to that and be honest with it. And sometimes when that change happens quickly, the mind's not prepared for it. I know for me personally, this past year has been eye-opening for me on so many fronts, because I've learned more about myself and the realities of happiness and the realities of depressing over certain things, and being honest with it, instead of just saying, sing kumbaya and say positive thoughts and I'm going to be better.
Right.
It wasn't working.
Doesn't work.
It wasn't working. So I had to go do exactly what we're talking about. Work out more, spend more quality time with my kids. I threw myself at my kids this past year, doing stuff with them every Sunday, where I wasn't getting them to school 4 or 5 days a week, where I wasn't doing that before. I mean, I'm finding now vehicles to go get those human needs met. So I think it goes to your point. But you have to be honest with it. Don't just turn your head to it and say, well, 5 years ago, I used to be the happiest person on the planet. Well, guess what? Right now, your behaviors exhibit not happy.
Right. It has nothing to do with how good intellectually you are or good you are at your job. I mean, we've seen great sports athletes that are as good as anybody at performing for their position, and they go into the tank. They go down. And so that coach, how did you bring, I mean, you talked about getting involved outside of yourself, getting involved with the kids, working out, get the activities up, and that helps. Yeah. Does you think it helps with the physical state and the blood flows, the brain opens up new elements? Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, well, one of my favorite adages that we learn in neurolinguistic programming is that mind and body are one. It's one of the presuppositions of NLP. Mind and body are one. If you think about that as an equation, mind equals body. So if the mind part is off, guess what? The other side of the equation will be off, and vice versa. You could have a great attitude, have emotionally everything going on, but physically you're just tired and you're not feeling well, or you've gained weight. It's eventually going to affect your mindset, no doubt about it. So when you can get the two...
It's like willpower.
Yeah.
You only have a certain amount of it.
Right. But it's the recognition of when that equation gets off, right? The mind and the body are starting to disconnect with each other. That's when you just got to go figure out on each side of the equation, what can I do for my mind, which for me was spend more time with my family, because that's when I smile the most, right? Like as mentioned, and body. So doing more things with workouts, doing things that are more physical in nature. Not necessarily going out and running marathons and, becoming the best triathlete, but just doing things a little bit different to engage the body. And I noticed that equation started to create a level set. And I noticed my happiness levels shifted in a way that I was happier, or, more fun to be around. The kids are having a better time. And you know how that goes as a father. Is if we come home in a bad mood, it sets the tone for the home for that night or the weekend.
Right.
That's why I always go back to talking to myself.
Be a facial expression.
Yeah, something quick, right? Conscious choice. I always remind myself, okay, we can choose right now to either change this mood or state, or we continue it, and it's going to be a rough night or a rough weekend. So a lot of that self-talk that we talk a lot about. Some people don't really understand that self-talk is such an important thing, because you talk to yourself at over 1,000 words a minute. That's a lot of talk, a lot of chatter. It's just a 5-minute period. So you're sitting there quiet in the office for 5 minutes. That's 5,000 words on average that you've been saying things to yourself. Well, what are you saying? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it just neutral? What are you feeding it? So I think a lot of that too, we go back to that environmental piece. Choose to be around good people, to your point. Choose just like smartphones. I always tell people, put the darn things down.
Yeah, that's a challenge.
Nothing's positive's coming at you. You're not getting 50 emails in the morning telling you how great you are from your colleagues. You're getting deals done, service issues, change of flights, stuff. Yeah. I mean, as you and I are sitting here doing this podcast, our phones are probably blowing up. Right. But we're not paying attention to that. We're focused on each other and we're being present.
Right.
So that conscious choice of doing things like that influences happiness. So that's another thing to think about.
Yeah. So moving back to the workplace, I mean, you've done a great job of sharing how to personally take responsibility over what you do to affect happiness and everything. What's interesting to me and you can go through this again, your levels, your human needs, the significance. And I want to take that into the perspective of you now have a team and you're manager, supervisor over that team. And you maybe personally are happy and engaged and you're working out and you're firing, but maybe someone or a couple of people on your team maybe have some life events, maybe something else in their environment isn't right, and they are in that 40% choice range where they're not making they're kind of going with their default maybe set points. How do you influence that with them? How do you get them into the same action? Do you just share a conversation we're having? Do you coach them, and how quickly do you expect that to turn?
Yeah.
Like, do you expect them to turn their state immediately, or is it, a process?
There's a phrase that I try to stay away from is motivate people. People need to motivate themselves. People have to it has to come from within. That goes back to the purpose, passion, or do you love what you do? That's all within. I don't motivate people. I just ask people the right questions. And they come up with their own motivation.
So intrinsic, so instead of motivating them a way out of whatever challenge they have, maybe divorce, something financially, who knows, something in their life, instead of trying to motivate them and throw happiness, like that's the last thing you want to hear, right? When you're struggling with
people don't want
issues. Maybe asking them questions like, what's it going to feel like when you move past this and you look back and you're like on top of your world? Like, is that the kind of...
Yeah, I'm a big fan of when I see people like that in my life or my career, is encouraging people to reach out to somebody in their life. I don't mean go seek professional counseling. I have done that. I've told people to go do that because it was necessary. I have clients and family members that have done that, and it worked wonders. Some people they have too much ego or pride, and they think it may put.
Well, they also have to do the work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to take that initial step, make that phone call. How many times I've had clients say, "I know I need to get that appointment booked for my family counselor, but I'm just nervous." And then they don't make that phone call, and then guess what? The problem persists. So that's a problem. But I'm not saying professional counseling is necessarily always the answer, but it could be somebody in your own life. I for example, I have a mentor and my co-author I told you about, Dan Lear. Dan's 10 years ahead of me, so it's weird how my life is tracked in so many similar ways as his. Our birthdays are 4 days apart, 10 years. So he's helped me navigate issues throughout 30s, late 30s, turning 40, about to be 45 this year, right? Kids are now going to be 9 and 6. So kids are teenagers. So he can say, okay, Mike, here's what's about to happen. They're going to go into this phase. Here's how it's going to affect you and your wife. Here's what you're going to be 45. Here's how your body's going to change.
Yeah.
Right. It's real stuff. So that's something I've told companies. Hey, when you have an employee that's going through something, just encourage them just through the questions. Don't go be motivational on them and be all happy and try to take them out and surround them with fake happiness or go partying or whatever.
Make it worse sometimes.
Yeah, encourage that person to reach out to someone in their life. Is there anybody in your life? Or is there anybody in your family? Sometimes, I know it's an awkward position, but sometimes that person may seek you out because they trust you. You're their boss or you've known them for 15 plus years. But a lot of times what happens with that individual is they get left alone because people have this bad belief, well, you got to keep your work over here and your home over here. You don't bring the two together. That's their issue, not mine. I don't believe that. I don't believe that, not one bit. This person works for you. They're a valued employee. They're a mom. They're a dad. They're a contributor to your profits. So to sit there and let that person continue to depress or to be dysfunctional in a position without saying something, to me, that's just a negligent leader.
Right, or giving up on them.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting because my reflection on many of the days that I journaled as a professional athlete, I'll use the Yankees because that's what I know. They do such a wonderful job from the many different generations. The rookies that are 18, 19 coming out of high school to the retired guys that are 90, 80 that are around just for mentorship and special advisors. But I remember I had a situation where I had been on top of my game my whole career, and I got to the Yankees. I had a really bad opening day. And I got caught up in my mind. They had these red, white, and blue banners out, and every time the hitter would hit it, it would come out of that white banner. I couldn't see it, so I was like getting caught up in the environment and mentally, and made some errors, and I had a really bad day. And the Yankees did a really good job of connecting us inside the organization with people that have been there before you. And the guys that have been there before us, or the newer guys, spent the time to mentor, carry them along, invest in that time. Because as an organization, in a sports organization, I say this all the time, if companies could realize this, is they are the capital. I mean, that's how they sell tickets. They don't sell tickets because they want to sell tickets. They have to win first. And they know in order to win, they've got to get good with their people. And if their people are off line it anyway, they've got to connect them. But I did remember that what you just shared, it just brought to focus a lot of what a championship sports team does in getting, people and some, Lee Mazzilli, Clete Boyer. And I remember Clete Boyer, when I was under the pressure of spring training, under all the instruction of what to do and how to, and you're in an element where, the Yankee greats are there. So it's not like you're going to, show off here, right? Like, and you got to perform. And I remember kind of getting into my own head. And it was Clete Boyer that took me out to second base, and he said, just pick up the ball over there and throw it over there. And he kind of simplified things. And from that moment on, like, things shifted for me. But without that conversation or without that investment, he didn't have to do that. It was 110 degrees, and he had that shiny Yankee jacket and the towel around his head. And by the way, at that time, I didn't know really who he was. Yeah. But I knew that he spent time with me, and that was kind of cool. But it can shift somebody out of their own element. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to.
It's funny you talk about keeping things simple and playing with the Yankees theme, and you and I are Yankee guys. So Nick Johnson, of course, like we've talked about. Nick played first base for the Yankees for 5-6 years, and he was in a slump one year right out of the gates, right? March 31st.
Which Nick in a slump is not.
Yeah, no, he's an on-base percentage guy. He never, swings the ball. He doesn't miss very often. So I don't remember what his slump was, but it was pretty deep. I want to say, 2 for 25 or something. He'll be bad or butcher the number, but it wasn't good. So I remember I was texting him, and I knew he's got all these great batting coaches, behind him. I don't remember who they were, Mattingly and these other guys that are, these awesome hitters. And I said, what do they teach you? You're a Major League Baseball player. You know how to hit a ball. Okay, you're going through a slump. We all go through slumps in baseball or life. What do they tell you? And basically he said, it's simple. See the ball, hit the ball. I'm like, they get paid all that money to tell you those things behind the cage. See the ball, hit the ball. Yeah. And I took that as a metaphor. And Nick broke out of the slump, by the way. He had a great year that year. It was great. I think he ended up like top 5 in on-base percentage. He had a great year. But I thought about that is so powerful in business, in life, because we complicate things through that self-talk, 1,000 words a minute, working ourselves up into something that's not even there. Fear, false evidence appearing real, right? It's not there. But when you start overthinking the pitch, or you're trying to guess, you're not trusting your instincts anymore. You know this is a Major League Baseball player. You've got to just go up there, see the ball, hit the ball. Just like him telling you, just pick up this ball here and throw it over there. Right. It's that simple. But it's sometimes in life, when people come to us as consultants or as coaches, CEOs or leaders will expect these big, huge pearls of wisdom to come flowing out of my mouth because I've been doing this for 18 years. And I'll tell a leader something simple like, when's the last time you contributed to your staff, your team? Like you did something different, not just pay them, not just, the basics, did something over the top to show appreciation. You get these blank stares a lot of times. And like, you know what, you're right. You're right. We used to do happy hours on Fridays, or we used to do quarterly trips, and we don't do those anymore. Well, maybe that's where you got to start and think, that's why I'm paying you all this money, to make me go spend more money. Right. Yeah, it kind of works like that. You got to invest in your people, and you got to be contributory, and that's what makes people happy. I want to go back to what you said earlier about great organizations like the Yankees and what they can do. There's some great stories that came out of the Dallas when Mark Cuban took over the Dallas Mavericks, and all the basketball players knew him to be kind of an entrepreneur tech guy. He wasn't, born and raised in the NBA. He's this outsider kid.
Yeah, who's this young guy?
Yeah, who's this young guy? Young billionaire. And he basically, the way the story goes, I saw this documentary on it, and they interviewed different people on the staff and how he kind of came into the company after he sold broadcast. And he basically held a meeting with the team and handed out paper and pens and said, just tell me what you want to change. What do you want to change? I want no excuses. I want to win a championship. Right. So if you tell me what's going to make you happy, all right, I'm going to deliver on those things to the best I can. And in return, in the next couple of years, I want a championship. So they're interviewing one of the staffers in this live interview. It's like a documentary. It's like, we're kind of nervous to read the feedbacks because we're thinking they want more salaries, right? Yeah, right. Bigger bonuses,
$40 million.
Yeah, they want a new stadium, right? You're thinking this is the worst case scenario, right? And they didn't. They wanted simple things. Like one guy had a certain request of the food. One of the food court, they didn't have a certain meal up at the food, for the fans. They thought would be a great idea because his family wanted that thing and they didn't have it. One of the guys said he wanted recliners next to the locker because these guys are tall guys. They don't want to be sitting on this stool thing. They wanted a recliner. They wanted a flat screen, a nice flat screen that they can watch sports on. I mean, some of the stuff was so trivial. It was mind-boggling. You're talking about the Dallas Mavericks, and Mark Cuban, smart guy that he is, comes in there and gives them exactly what they want, the small things that make them happy, and guess what? Within the next 2 to 3 years, championship is delivered.
Yeah.
Funny how it works, huh?
It is funny. And, people that are happy perform better financially, and in business, they create a better resident experience or customer experience because they're happier. They're in front of the customer better. They're doing better things. Before we wrap up here, because we're coming up on the end of our little segment here, I want to talk about performance, because this is more of, I guess, my perspective on it. But I believe I believe people are happy when they're winning. So, for example, the way that I lead my children, I don't try and please them. I try and prepare them. I want them to be in a position like Riley, my youngest, was giving a speech in front of students, right? Yeah. This can be a very anxious situation. So I created a fail-safe environment, a home. Let's practice the speech. Let's get it down. Let's memorize section after section. And basically, he became really good at talking about, in this case, it was Lou Gehrig. And then when he went into class, he performed well, and everybody clapped, and he felt good, and he felt like a little rock star or whatever. And then he was happy. And so I felt like there was times when he's like, Dad, I know this, let's not study again. Like I pushed him in the process part to be prepared, knowing that he'll be happy when he's recognized, not by me, but by his audience, right? So in business, what can we do in the performance element to create happy people? Do we coach them? Do we challenge them? Do you subscribe, or do you see where I'm going with that?
I think the coaching, that's parenting, but that's coaching, and to me they're very similar. With clients that I work with one-on-one, these are really smart people. They're already successful. They didn't hire me because they're struggling financially or otherwise. They're just looking for that coveted next level. That's what I always talk about. Everyone's got that next level. So what I see in my job is to help that person identify where are they now compared to where they want to go. Identify that gap, which that's what I call the gap. Mind the gap. So when you focus on the gap, you're going to find things through questions, through writing, through the banter back and forth, whether it be parenting or coaching, either way, to help draw out, what's missing. Because usually there's some limiting belief in there that's stopping them from holding back. Like, for example, in your situation, public speaking. Most human beings don't like to get up in front of people, let alone a kid. It's a high anxiety situation, absolutely. But when you can remove the anxiety of it and have that young person or professional see the positive, they see the good, they see the win in their mind, right? He probably pictured everybody clapping at the end and smiling and making him feel good, right? You paint that picture, but sometimes when they're stuck in the gap, they don't see that picture. So you have to continually remind through that question, hypothetically, envision this. The more that you can, what we call pre-frame the mind. Pre-frame is just to set it up in advance mentally so they can see it in the mind's eye. It's kind of like in sports when you visualize something. You visualize a shot in golf, you visualize a hit in baseball or a shot in basketball. I do this funny exercise.
Then you're just reacting.
This funny exercise I do in trainings where I say, everybody stand up and close your eyes and pretend you're on a basketball court at the free throw line. And you're dribbling the ball and you're about to shoot a free throw. Everyone's closing their eyes. And so I want you to go ahead and visualize the shot. Just go ahead and reach up there with your hand, and everyone's got their hand in the air, and males, females, doesn't matter. And they're shooting the shot. And then I say, okay, open your eyes. Be honest with me. Did anybody in your mind's eye miss the shot? And you always get a couple people who raise their hand embarrassingly going, I'm not a basketball player. I just pictured myself missing the shot because I've never played basketball. I said, why in the world? It's a hypothetical. It's just a visualization technique. Why would you see yourself clanking it off the rim?
A double
just
rim.
for fun, right?
Yeah.
So it's that same concept. The majority of people, 98% of people, whether they played basketball or not, visualize themselves making that shot. That's the point. So it's the same thing in giving a speech. It's the same thing in doing a sales presentation. It's the same thing in life and business. You've got to pre-frame yourself mentally, right? In that gap to see, I'm going to get past this gap. I'm going to get to where I want to go, that next level, but I'm going to have to get through this part so I can eventually, I'm going to visualize and see the positive, the success, the happiness that's on the other side of it.
That's good stuff. Mike, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been great.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. If you get a few moments, please subscribe, rate, and review this show on iTunes or on your own favorite platform. This helps others discover our program, and it tells us that we are doing a good job.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the Multifamily Leadership Podcast. For show notes and other resources, visit multifamilyleadership.com.